Emma woke up to the golden light spilling across her apartment. The kind of light that made everything feel possible, even ordinary mornings. She stretched lazily, feeling the warmth of her bed and the quiet hum of the city beyond her window. There was a flutter in her chest, a sense of anticipation she couldn't explain. She had plans today, though not the kind that usually made her nervous. Today Luke was coming over. Luke had always been a little unpredictable. The kind of person who could turn a normal day into something that felt like it belonged in a movie. He wasn't just handsome, though. But there was a gentleness in his eyes. A quiet insistence in the way he carried himself. Emma had known him for years, friends since college. But somewhere along the way, the line between friendship and something deeper had blurred. And now she felt it pulling at her, subtly but insistently. Her phone buzzed. A message from Luke. "I'll be there in 10. Don't make anything fancy, I want to see you, not the pancakes." Emma smiled. He always knew how to make her heart skip a beat with the simplest words. She grabbed a cup of coffee, letting the aroma fill her senses, grounding her in the morning dot when the knock came. Her pulse quickened. Luke stood there with that half smile she knew so well, holding a small box. Something about the way he hesitated before handing it to her made her stomach twist with curiosity. I got this for you," he said. His voice had an unusual softness, as if he were sharing something far bigger than a gift. Emma took the box, turning it in her hands. It was small, neatly wrapped, nothing extravagant. But something about it felt deliberate, meaningful. She opened it carefully, revealing a delicate bracelet, simple and elegant. The sunlight caught its surface, and it shimmered. "It's beautiful," she breathed. Luke's fingers brushed hers for just a moment. "I wanted it to fit perfectly, even if it feels a little tight at first." His words lingered in the air. Emma raised her eyebrows, a faint laugh escaping her lips. The bracelet was indeed snug, the kind that reminded you it was there, pressing gently against your wrist. "It's a little tight," she admitted. Half teasing, half curious. "That's the point," Luke said quietly, watching her with an intensity that made her pulse quicken. Some things feel uncomfortable at first. Some things require adjustment. But if you let them, they become part of you. Emma felt a flutter she couldn't quite place. His words weren't just about the bracelet, they were about him. About their connection. About the space he was trying to carve in her life. She smiled softly, tugging lightly at the bracelet until it settled. It was snug, yes, but it didn't hurt. Instead, it made the gesture feel sincere, almost earnest in its insistence. Luke watched her carefully, as if he were waiting for her reaction. Not to the bracelet, but to the meaning behind it. "See? A little snug at first. But you'll get used to it. That's how life works. Sometimes the things that matter most feel a little too much at first." Emma's mind raced. He had a way of saying things that sounded simple, but they carried weight. She thought of all the times she had hesitated, pulled back, kept herself from risk or disappointment. And here was Luke asking her gently to trust him, to let something that felt too tight at first settle into her life. Her smile softened. She looked at him and saw the hope in his eyes, the vulnerability he rarely allowed anyone to see. She nodded, almost imperceptibly, understanding more than words could express. She felt the quiet thrill of anticipation, the kind that made her stomach flip and her heart race. Then, just as she thought the moment was complete, the doorbell rang. Emma frowned. "I didn't order anything," she murmured. Luke's brow furrowed. "Me neither." "That's strange. Curious?" Emma went to the door and saw a package sitting on the mat. It was unmarked, nothing to indicate who had left it. She brought it inside, hands trembling slightly. She opened it carefully, and inside was a note written in neat handwriting. Not everything fits perfectly the first time, but some things are meant to. Her eyes widened, and she looked at Luke. His expression had shifted, quiet and unreadable, a mixture of anticipation and restraint. She unfolded the tissue inside the box and saw another, smaller box nested within it. The first bracelet was part of the message, but this was something else. Luke's voice broke the silence. "Sometimes you have to take risks." Sometimes the things that feel too tight at first are the ones that can change everything. Emma's heart raced. The second box was small, but it carried weight not in material value, but in promise. She could feel it in the air, in the way Luke stood there, waiting for her reaction, patient yet insistent. Her fingers trembled slightly as she lifted the smaller box. Inside was a charm, a tiny symbol, something that seemed almost ordinary but felt charged with intention. She turned to Luke, searching for meaning in his eyes. "It's a reminder," he said softly, "that the things that matter most sometimes feel uncomfortable at first, but they're worth it. Worth the effort. Worth the adjustment." Emma's throat tightened. She wasn't used to this level of emotional honesty, this kind of vulnerability from anyone. And yet, with Luke, it felt right. Natural even. She felt herself leaning toward him, though not physically, but in spirit, letting herself open to the possibility of something new, something meaningful. He reached for her hand, brushing it lightly with his fingers. Just enough to make contact, but not to overwhelm. The simple gesture sent a warmth through her that she couldn't explain. It was soft, tender, and insistently present, like the bracelet, like the charm, like the promise he was making without words. "I know it's a little much," he said quietly, his voice low but steady. "But some things that seem too tight at first are the ones that stay. They become part of you. They shape you in ways you can't always predict." Emma nodded slowly. She could feel the truth in his words. Life had taught her caution, hesitation, holding back. And yet, here she was, drawn to someone who insisted gently that she take a chance, that she allow herself to feel, to trust, to risk the discomfort of something new for the promise of something lasting. The tension in the room was palpable. But it wasn't heavy. It was the kind of tension that spoke of potential, of a story just beginning. Emma felt a flutter in her chest, a mix of curiosity, anticipation, and longing. She realized she wanted to find out what came next. Not just with the bracelet or the charm, but with Luke himself. Luke watched her, treating her silence as acceptance, patience as encouragement. And then, with a faint, almost imperceptible smile, he stepped back, giving her space, letting her choose. Letting her decide. Emma held the charm in her hand, feeling its smooth surface, thinking about the words, the sentiment, the unspoken emotions tied to it. She understood the message: love, trust, connections. Sometimes they felt too tight at first, hard to accept, almost uncomfortable. But if she allowed it, if she adjusted herself and let the feeling in, it could settle perfectly, comfortably, in a way that changed everything. The sun continued to rise, filling the room with light, and Emma felt herself standing at a threshold. The ordinary morning had turned into something extraordinary. She felt anticipation, nervousness, and a growing sense of hope. Something was coming, something that could change the rhythm of her life. And somehow she knew she was ready for it, ready to explore it, ready to trust. The bracelet on her wrist pressed just enough to remind her that life, like love, required adjustment. And the small charm in her hand whispered that some of the best things were worth the slight discomfort, worth the leap, worth the insistence. And as Emma looked at Luke, she realized she wanted to take that leap. She wanted to discover what it meant to let someone in, to allow a connection to grow, to feel the tightness of the first step and the comfort of what could come after. The morning passed quietly, filled with the soft tension of possibility. Emma and Luke sat together, aware of each other, aware of the moment, aware of the fragile, budding connection that felt like it could blossom into something lasting. And though nothing had been said outright, both of them knew life had a way of bringing people together, gently, insistently. Even if it felt too tight at first. Emma glanced down at her wrist, feeling the bracelet snugly in place, and then at the charm in her hand. Both were small, simple objects, yet they carried meaning, promise, and the subtle thrill of something new. And in that quiet morning, with sunlight spilling around them, Emma felt a shift. She didn't know what tomorrow would bring. She didn't know how the connection between them would unfold. But for the first time in a long time, she felt ready to find out. Because sometimes the things that feel too tight at first are the ones that are meant to fit perfectly, if only you let them. And Emma, at that moment, chose to let it in. Evening fell softly over the city, casting a warm glow through the windows of Emma's apartment. The bracelet on her wrist still caught the light, a subtle reminder of the morning's events, of Luke's presence, of the delicate thread of anticipation that had tied them together. The charm in her hand rested lightly between her fingers, a small, tangible symbol of what was budding quietly, insistently between them. Emma sat on the couch, her thoughts tangled yet electric with possibility. She could feel the quiet weight of the day pressing in, the routines, the expectations, the small anxieties she carried, but Luke's presence made everything lighter, sharper, somehow more real. He was in the room, close but not overwhelming, offering a steady warmth that both comforted and challenged her. Luke broke the silence first. "You've been quiet," he said softly, his voice low but confident. "Thinking, I hope, about more than the bracelet." Emma smiled, though a little nervously. "I've been thinking about everything. About how sometimes things feel too tight at first. How some things make you hesitate." "That's exactly it," Luke said, leaning forward slightly, resting his elbows on his knees. "Some things, some people make you feel a little uncomfortable at first. Not in a bad way, but in a way that makes you aware, makes you notice, makes you wonder. But if you're willing to stretch, to adjust, it can fit perfectly." Emma's fingers traced the edge of the charm. It was simple, elegant, almost ordinary, and yet it carried a weight far beyond its size. She had always been careful with her heart, cautious, hesitant to let anyone close. And now Luke was asking her not to just let him in, but to embrace the discomfort, to test the fit, to trust the process. She lifted the second box, her hands trembling just slightly. Inside lay a scarf, soft, delicate, and smaller than she expected. "It's snug," she murmured, almost to herself. "That's the point," Luke said with a faint smile. "Some things that matter require a little patience, a little adjustment. But when they finally fit, they become exactly what you need." Emma picked up the scarf, feeling its softness, its subtle weight. She draped it over her shoulders, adjusting it carefully. At first it felt tight, almost constricting, but as she moved, as she allowed herself to breathe, it settled comfortably. It wasn't perfect immediately, but it was better than she had expected, better than she had hoped. Luke watched her closely, not intrusively, but with a quiet intensity that made her pulse quicken. "See?" he said softly. "Sometimes things feel too tight, but they're just waiting for you to get used to them. Waiting for the moment when you realize they belong." Emma felt a rush of warmth, not just from the scarf, but from him, from the way he spoke, from the way he waited. There was no pressure, only insistence, the kind that demanded attention, the kind that asked for trust without forcing it. "I think I understand," she whispered. "It's not about the discomfort. It's about letting it settle, about trusting that it will fit." Luke's eyes softened. "Exactly. Life, love, all of it, doesn't always slide in perfectly. Sometimes you have to make room. Sometimes you have to adjust. And sometimes you have to let someone insist gently so it can find its place." Emma felt a flutter in her chest, a mixture of anticipation and nervousness. She realized that this was more than just a morning surprise or an evening gift. This was Luke inviting her into a rhythm, a connection, a story that could unfold in ways she hadn't imagined. They sat together, the room quiet except for the soft hum of the city beyond the windows. Neither of them spoke for a while, but the silence wasn't empty. It was charged with meaning, with the subtle intimacy of two people sharing a moment that felt both fragile and significant. Emma traced the bracelet on her wrist again, noticing how it had settled comfortably. It had felt too tight at first, but now it was a part of her. She understood what Luke had meant. Some things needed a little insistence, a little patience, a little trust, to find their place. Luke's hand brushed hers lightly, a touch that was almost accidental but deliberate enough to convey intention. Emma didn't pull away. She felt the warmth, the steady reassurance, the quiet encouragement. It was not a grand gesture, not a dramatic declaration, was the simple insistence that mattered. I've never been good at taking risks, she admitted softly. Not with people, not with feelings. You don't have to be, Luke said gently. Not with me, just let it in a little at a time. That's all I'm asking. Emma nodded slowly. She felt the weight of his words, the sincerity behind them. It wasn't just about gifts or gestures, it was about connection, about willingness, about letting someone enter your life even when it feels a little uncomfortable at first. She took a deep breath and leaned back, allowing the scarf to settle fully on her shoulders. Feeling its softness, its snugness, its presence. It was tight, yes, but not unpleasant. It reminded her that life's best moments often required adjustment. That love, trust, and intimacy were not about ease. They were about effort, tension, and acceptance. Luke smiled, a faint, relieved smile. You see? It fits. Emma smiled back, though her heart was racing. It wasn't just the scarf. It was him, his patience, his quiet insistence, the way he had made space for her to adjust, to breathe, to trust. She felt a shift inside herself, a growing willingness to explore what could be, to embrace the tension, the tightness, the challenge. Outside, the night deepened. Lights flickering softly in nearby apartments, the city settling into its evening rhythm. Inside, Emma and Luke shared the quiet intimacy of people discovering something delicate yet powerful. Something tender yet insistent. Emma looked at him, studying his expression. There was hope there, yes, but also restraint. A respect for her pace. A subtle encouragement to take the next step without feeling pressured. She realized that this was rare kind of insistence that demanded trust. But in the gentlest way possible, Luke, she said softly. I think I'm ready to see where this goes. Even if it feels tight at first. His eyes lit up, relief and warmth mingling in his gaze. That's all I'm asking, he said. A little openness. A little trust. Everything else. We'll figure it out together. Emma felt a rush of emotion she could not name. It wasn't just excitement. It wasn't just longing. It was the quiet thrill of connection, of potential, of a story beginning to unfold with someone she trusted, someone who insisted gently, persistently on being part of her life. They sat in silence again, letting the moment stretch, letting the tension evolve into comfort, anticipation into understanding. The scarf settled fully around her shoulders, the bracelet snug on her wrist, symbols of the small but significant steps they were taking together. Emma thought about all the times she had held back, the moments she had hesitated, the chances she had not taken. And now, sitting here, feeling the gentle pressure of the scarf and the steady warmth of Luke's presence, she understood. Some things required patience, courage, and a willingness to accept a little discomfort for the promise of something lasting. Luke's hand brushed hers once more. Lighter this time, a gentle encouragement, an invitation without urgency. Emma did not pull away. She felt the connection, the subtle intimacy, the quiet insistence that had brought them here, and she let herself lean into it. Outside, the city continued its evening hum, oblivious to the quiet transformation inside Emma's apartment. Inside, Emma felt a shift of recognition that some things, some people, some moments were worth the effort, worth the adjustment, worth the gentle insistence. She looked at Luke, seeing not just a friend, but a presence, a partner, someone willing to step patiently, insistently into her life. And she realized she wanted that. She wanted him. She wanted the connection, the story, the unfolding of something delicate, tender, and real. And as the night deepened, Emma felt ready to embrace it, all the tension, the snugness, the small insistences that made life meaningful. She knew that tomorrow, the day after, and the days to come would hold challenges, adjustments, and moments of uncertainty. But for now, in this quiet evening, she allowed herself to feel something rare and beautiful: trust, hope, and the possibility of love that fit. Eventually, perfectly. Because sometimes, the things that feel too tight at first are the ones that belong most. And Emma, at that moment chose to let it belong.